A young protege being taught how to channel their innate abilities becomes resentful of their teacher and lured by dark forces. A new pupil is trained and gets cast into the conflict, joining forces with a group of rebels to stop the enemy's ultimate weapon before it can take over the universe. That's right, today we're talking about Equestria Girls. The movie, released earlier this year, managed to dispel most fears that a fresh "let's make new toys to sell" initiative by Hasbro would once again spell doom for the rejuvenated franchise. Who could have guessed that the team with 3 seasons of the show under their belts could manage to pull it off? While not exactly released to universal acclaim, it was a solid effort that established an entirely new universe that held promise to stand on its own as long as they didn't immediately mess it up. The movie does paint the staff of the comic into something of the proverbial corner though. By covering the end of Sunset Shimmer's arc as an antagonist, the comic has little choice but to take us back in the overall story. And if other franchises have taught us anything, it's that prequel is a 4-letter word. Strangely, while the movie suffered the burden of world building and having to bridge the gap between the established show and the spin-off, it manages a much more coherent story than the comic. The former managed this by leveraging characters familiar to the viewers and building the story primarily around a single character. The latter chooses to issue any familiarity on the part of the reader with regards to the main cast as we already know, and almost entirely ignores the primary antagonist of the series. And by choosing to go all tabula rasa on the franchise while simultaneously feeling the need to bring us up to speed with the characters in the show, the comic feels like it's trying to cram the information into us like Kung Fu into Neo, creating a muddled mess of origin stories, and in the process burns through enough story material to make me wonder whether anyone was actually serious about an Equestria Girls comic becoming a thing. While the opening segment by the all-familiar team of Cook, Price, and Breckle does a commendable job, filling in Sunset Shimmer's backstory and setting the rest of the comic up with a perfect villain to run with, the bulk of this issue is by Ted Anderson, Tony Fleece, and Lauren Perry, who together have worked on a number of the micro-series comics, and has Sunset Shimmer literally working behind the scenes in the most banal way possible, interviewing the main 6, sans Twilight, in an attempt to study this evil nemesis, friendship. The huge misstep is trying to make this into a story about Twilight's friends. They're the main characters, but it's their destiny to be cannon fodder. This is Sunset Shimmer's story. She wins, until Twilight comes along. And ignoring her character and simply regurgitating storylines from the cartoon is a complete misuse of her character. What this series could have been is a deconstruction of high school dynamics through the point of view of someone who is quite literally an outsider. Sunset Shimmer's lost her powers. She's just a kid. This is the story of how a troubled individual grows to manipulate and corrupt the people around her, the birth of a bully. It frustrates me knowing how thought-provoking and relatable the story could have been for individuals on both sides. Picture the frustration of Sunset Shimmer to assimilate into the environment and her pre-existing social issues, resulting in her constantly in trouble, further reinforcing her mentality of being unrecognized or appreciated for her gifts, forming a vicious downward spiral. Recognize the main 5 as Sunset Shimmer's antagonist, with their friendship routinely disrupting her plans, negatively reinforcing her feelings towards social bonds and driving her further towards self-imposed ostracism. Show just how far Sunset Shimmer falls. The growth of attitudes leading from egocentrism to perceiving friendship as the villain. How can you not end up with a compelling product here? The writing feels like a mashup of the Cutie Mark Chronicles with the series premiere, if Nightmare Moon was replaced by the games inspector who sat around doing absolutely nothing. It's an introduction to the main characters as they discover their special talents while drama and cattiness ensues. While the inhabitants of Canterlot High mirror their equestrian counterparts, the prequel nature of the story has devolved the characters into vague, one-note generalizations. And they're trying to tell 6 stories at once, covering some form of self-discovery for each of the characters and wrapping it all up into a larger narrative of how they became friends. Even given the length of this comic, it's all spread too thin with too little development all around. The turning point in Rainbow Dash's attitude consists of 4 words. That's all it took, apparently. Above this panel? Not loyal. Below? Loyal. It's just that easy. Not only are they friends together, if they weren't friends, they would have been terrible people. It all amounts to a strong justification of the original fears for this spin-off. I'm at a bit of a loss as to what to say about the artwork. It's just so adequate. The character design felt awkward at times, but it's hard to call that anything but personal taste. Objectively, the comic is just too bland to make much of an impact. Flip to a random page and odds are you'll find a 2x3 layout with one splash panel. When you've got 5 characters crammed into the same space as 2, you're clearly making compromises to maintain a predetermined layout. And with the complete lack of any unique or defining features in the school, it doesn't help stifle complaints that this story seems generic. I cannot believe how sterile the environment is. I can't find one word, one poster, one sign beyond a handful of booth names and the helpful cafeteria sign, strangely inside the door of the cafeteria itself. Even Counter-Strike puts motivational posters on the walls, guys. The coloring here is pretty solid. Characters stand out well from the backgrounds, and even in crowded panels, elements remain distinct rather than blending into a sea of identical hues. It feels very flat overall though, which doesn't help impart a lot of energy to the comic. And sometimes the coloring is in direct contrast to what we expect when the comic is trying to drum up some emotion. When Pinky's in full-on Pinky mode, the energy just gets sapped away when 3/4 of your panel is a drab, cool blue, completely in contrast with the energy you're trying to put into the panel. Spitfire's speech gets an appropriate treatment, again kind of flat, but okay, I'll chalk that up to personal taste. Even a one-off encounter with Diamond Tiara, so why not Pinky's? I wanted this to work. I really did. I understand the rationale behind stories of fitting in, standing up, and figuring out who you are, but my God, we've seen it before. There was a tremendous opportunity here to address a demographic that likely feels too old for the original, and to do something truly great and new by exploring the motivations of Sunset Shimmer rather than just lumping everything into a good/bad dichotomy. At the very least, they could have focused on the story of them becoming friends at the fair. 5 strangers exchanging virtually no words and hugging does not deserve a photo with the caption, "That's how we became friends." This series needs to figure out what it wants to be. Hopefully a follow-up comic can bring some focus back to the story. If not, Sunset Shimmer's future isn't looking very bright.